Think you've already watched every good historical show on Netflix? Trust me, you haven't. Today, I've got 10 shows you probably missed, taking you everywhere from World War I era France to Istanbul in the 50s, from flooded cities to fallen empires. Some get the facts right, others go for full-blown fiction, but all are entertaining. Sure, you'll catch some sketchy accents, some overly dramatic moments, and at least one cringe-worthy music choice. But if you're looking for war dramas, royal scandals, or just something with decent costumes and good acting, you'll definitely find something here. This one's about the huge 1997 floods in Poland, also called the Millennium Flood, a real disaster that completely submerged major parts of the country. It's set just a few years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and what's really cool is seeing how much old-school Soviet bureaucracy was still hanging around, complicating everything. You can tell they put a ton of effort into making it feel authentic. Story follows scientists and local officials in the city of Wrocławia making impossible decisions as the flood moves in. They actually choose to sacrifice nearby villages and farmland to save the main city. Visually, it's amazing. Big urban disaster scenes kind of gives you those Chernobyl or The Last of Us vibes, especially how it shows government incompetence during crises. This one's a Ryan Murphy show, which should tell you right away it's flashy, dramatic, and plays very fast and loose with history. Set right after World War II in Hollywood, it's basically a fantasy about young actors and filmmakers who'll literally do anything to make it big. Cast is solid. David Corenswet, who's the new Superman, plus Darren Criss from American Crime Story. Actually won a couple of Emmys. But fair warning, historically, it's all over the place. Some parts feel completely forced, especially how they handle real-life people. Rock Hudson's portrayal is pretty rough, honestly. I wish they'd either gone fully fictional or completely factual, instead of this weird in-between. Still, visually it's gorgeous. Great cinematography, super colorful, fun characters. If you're down for a glamorized fantasy version of the 40s and not worried about accuracy, it's definitely entertaining. This one's based on real-life events from early World War II, specifically in Marseille when it was still a sort of free zone in southern France. An American journalist spends over a year secretly helping more than 2,000 refugees. Many famous artists and intellectuals escape the Nazis by arranging passage to the U.S. Incredible true story. But the show itself is kinda split. Half the time it's a serious historical drama, and the other half they're shoehorning in romances and extra subplots. Lots of politically correct stuff that definitely wasn't top of mind during the actual wartime chaos. Plus, they do a lot of name-dropping famous people from the time, obviously trying to add a bit of extra appeal. Still, it's really watchable, especially if you're interested in lesser-known World War II stories or seeing real historical figures pop up. Just don't expect a fully accurate documentary, think more inspired by history drama instead. This one's set in the 1920s Madrid, right when Spain got its first national telephone company. The series follows 4 young women who start working there, which at that time was a big deal. It runs 5 seasons, so there's a lot of story, character drama, romance, and personal conflicts going on. Visually, everything's great. Costumes, acting, the whole period vibe, spot on. But one big problem: the soundtrack. They made the bizarre choice of using modern pop songs, even in dance scenes clearly set in the 20s. Totally kills the atmosphere. I wasn't the only one annoyed by this. Tons of viewers complained about it. Still, if you watch it in original Spanish with subtitles, skip the dubbed version, it's really strong. Shame about the music, but everything else is seriously good. Okay, straight up, this one's controversial. It's a retelling of the whole Trojan War story, Paris kidnapping Helen, Greeks invading, you know the deal. Except this version took some major creative liberties, changed tons of details from the original Iliad, and fans absolutely lost it over that. But honestly, what did people expect? It's an adaptation, not a word-for-word remake. It tries showing the story from new angles. Sure, it's uneven, way too many episodes, sometimes drags, and the acting can be pretty stiff. But despite all that, it's watchable, especially if you're into Greek myths told in new ways. Just don't expect something perfectly faithful to Homer. Treat it as a fantasy version of Troy. Entertaining enough to binge watch, especially if you already know how it ends and just want to relax for a few hours. First, quick disclaimer. Never ever rely on movies or TV to actually learn history. Always do your own research. Anyway, Self-Made is a 4-episode Netflix miniseries starring Octavia Spencer. It tells the pretty incredible story of Madam C.J. Walker, the first African-American self-made millionaire. Going in, I was hyped about it. Octavia Spencer and Tiffany Haddish both in it, fantastic cast, and honestly, they all did great. The costumes, the sets, all of that looked awesome too. Problem is, once I saw it and then read up about the real Madam C.J. Walker and the other characters, like Addie Monroe, who was based on the real-life Annie Malone, I was pretty disappointed. I mean, dramatizing a true story is fine. That's what these series do. But the writers added way too many inaccuracies. Some pretty big ones, actually. It kinda undermines what was otherwise a great cast and production quality. Could have been amazing, ended up just okay. Real shame. So, this one's a French series set during World War I, about 4 women left behind in France after the men head off to fight the Germans. You've got a prostitute whose son's off at war, a nurse on the run from something, a wealthy woman hiding secrets, and a nun. 4 characters who end up crossing paths in this small town near the front lines. The show gets some things right. The equipment shortages, the grimness of the war, the medical scenes, soldiers' morale, all felt authentic. But it's definitely not totally accurate historically, like they show gas attacks happening right at the start of the war in 1914, even though gas wasn't actually used until 1915. So, yeah, accuracy isn't exactly their strong point. Acting and overall production values are good, even if sometimes it veers into being overly dramatic. Still, worth a watch if you're interested in World War I stories from a slightly different perspective. If you've read Margaret Atwood's book, Alias Grace, you know how layered that story is. Basically, it's about this Irish immigrant maidservant named Grace Marks, who gets convicted for murdering her employer and his housekeeper. Years later, while she's in prison, a psychiatrist visits her, trying to figure out if she's actually guilty or not. Turning Atwood's book into a miniseries was a massive challenge. The novel is huge, over 500 pages, packed with details and nuances. Mary Herron directed this, with Sarah Polley and Atwood herself producing, and honestly, they nailed it. Sarah Gadon, who plays Grace, is phenomenal. She's subtle, believable, and manages to seem both innocent and sinister all at once. The scenes with her and the psychiatrist, Dr. Jordan, have great tension. Supporting cast is strong too. Paul Gross and Anna Paquin especially. But Gadon's so good she kinda overshadows everyone else. Honestly, it doesn't matter if you've read the book or not. This one stands totally on its own. Here's a Turkish series that some fans have compared to Scorsese movies for its detail and style. Set in 1950s Istanbul, you've got this mother with a complicated past working in a nightclub, trying to reconnect with her daughter who she never really raised. It's basically family drama meets historical drama meets love story, all in a super detailed period setting. Production values are really impressive. The costumes, the sets, they got the look of cosmopolitan 1950s Istanbul spot on. Plus, Salih Bademci gives an amazing performance. Totally heartfelt, super emotional. You genuinely believe his passion every time he's on screen. It's not perfectly accurate historically, there's definitely some creative license here and there, but it does touch on certain historical events that Turkish series usually avoid talking about. Overall, this one's definitely a milestone in Turkish TV, worth watching even if you're not usually into foreign dramas. Alright, some good points first. Pretty decent acting, cool scenery, and a genuinely interesting premise. Basically, Jason Momoa plays Declan Harp, half Irish, half native outlaw, who accidentally ends up in colonial Canada, getting caught up in a violent fight over the fur trade monopoly held by the Hudson's Bay Company. Not many shows focus on the Canadian fur trade, so props for doing something different. But let's be clear, this show was never meant to be a history class. It got criticized a lot for historical inaccuracies and weird accents, but honestly, I didn't care about that. It's entertainment, not a documentary, right? If you're going into this expecting a history lesson, you're watching it wrong. Biggest problem? They canceled it without giving it an ending. That's always frustrating. No real closure. But until then, it was genuinely entertaining. Fun to watch. So yeah, good show. Shame they left us hanging,